but there was no dualistic relationship to anymore. There was no sense left that this fogginess is obscuring something or is separating me from something. There was no me that was separated from anything anymore, and there was no place or clarity or state to get to anymore. Me getting through the obscuration to Buddha nature, all was gone, and there was only Buddha nature left. Only this basic clarity shining as all phenomena, shining as the fogginess. So the fogginess was not arising in a dualistic way anymore.
Hello and welcome to the Lion Face Guru podcast. I'm Chris, and this is one of a series of interviews with the Mahasiddhas of Amrita Mandala Sangha. Founded by Amrita Baba, we are a relatively small group of a little over 70 practitioners, 14 of whom in the last couple of years have reached the first stage of Buddhahood. Also known as complete realization of emptiness, they have purified all karmas of the mind, exhausted all phenomena. They have attained perfect wakefulness for the sake of all beings. They are enlightened. Our guest today is Ugi Müller from Switzerland, and we will be chatting to him a little about his journey along the path and his experience of his realization of emptiness. So these terms, Buddhahood, enlightened, Mahasiddha, in our modern spiritual world, they hold a lot of weight. They hold a lot of cultural baggage. They can be seen as grandiose, lofty, unachievable, particularly for lay Western practitioners who aren't even monks, who have ordinary worldly lives. And it is ingrained, even a pervasive idea, that one shouldn't make such claims, or that one even couldn't make such claims. How could someone who has removed all ego make such a claim? Well, this isn't how we see it in our Sangha. We see that there are numerous examples of past masters who have made such bold claims. And why would they do such a thing? We see that they did it for entirely pragmatic, practical, and compassionate reasons. Of course, there are many warnings from past masters of making claims of something you are not, or bragging about such things. Clearly, there can be damaging or even disastrous consequences. The problem with secrecy around openness of awakenings and attainments is that there are a couple of very classic ways you can get lost. It is surprisingly common to see people lost in states of bliss, believing they are further along the path than they actually are, when actually they are simply spiritually bypassing, or lost in the depths of dark nights, in despair and confusion, wondering what you're doing wrong, when actually what is happening is the depths of your subconscious are being revealed to you. And with a group of friends and Sangha members who are open about these things, who are straightforward about talking about these things, you then have people along the journey with you you can chat to about what is going on, and you can talk to people who are clearly further along the path than you, who have experienced this difficult and treacherous terrain and can help you navigate past the obstacles and difficulties along the way. So one of my main motivations for wanting to do these interviews is that I've been fortunate enough to witness many of the journeys of my now friends who have traveled this path. I've heard them talk about their highs and their lows, their difficulties, their obstacles, their traumas that they've had to overcome, very raw human experiences, living very ordinary, busy lives of work and family. And now they've supposedly reached the other side. They're talking about their experiences of emptiness, of having overcome this samsaric suffering. So I see this as a great opportunity to learn about these experiences, not just from historic textbooks, but to chat to people with real life examples in the modern world that is relevant and relatable to us, so that we can learn as best as possible what this experience is, where we are leading to, and how to navigate the difficulties along the way. So I see this as valuable and beneficial to everyone. So now let me introduce to you Ugi Müller, our guest today. And Ugi has began with Amrita Mandala Sangha maybe about 3.5 years ago. And
Exactly.
I first came across Ugi at the start of my path, which was about 2.5 years ago, through a testimonial that he did. And my first impression of that was that this is someone who has taken the time to assess and test several different avenues for himself, but he was realizing the blind sides of other methods that he'd tried. And he had realized that there was a path that was opening up to him with Amrita Mandala Sangha. Ugi has been very prominent in our Sangha. He very early on trained as an acharya, a teacher of this path. And I think that really helped him along the path. But he has set up the German-Swiss Sangha, and the Sangha's doing very well. Some students who have done incredibly well themselves. I first met Ugi in person. Unfortunately, it was a while because of COVID, but I first met Ugi last summer at the summer retreat in Aberystwyth in Wales. And my first impression of Ugi was of his warm-heartedness, his clear, stable clarity, stable presence, and just his joy, his lightheartedness, his spontaneity. And so welcome, Ugi, to the Lion Face Guru podcast.
My biggest pleasure to be here, Chris. Thank you.
So the first thing I wanted to ask you was, what was it in your early stages that drove you to spirituality in itself, but then obviously what drove you to join with Amrita Mandala Sangha? What was that sort of existential pain perhaps that you were experiencing?
Yes, in my teenage years, I experienced a lot of suffering, mental, emotional suffering in myself. And at this time, I thought there's only one solution, and this was getting a girlfriend. That was my main problem, or the one I saw at this point. And from the beginning of realizing that I was suffering, I always had some kind of a one-pointed determination. So it was always a kind of all or nothing approach I brought to my suffering. So at this point in my teenage years, it was, I need a girlfriend, or I will never be happy, I'll forever be a loser. And I will never feel whole, never feel good. Yeah. I need to have a girlfriend. And with 19 years old or 18 years old, I got into the self-help community and started to do all kinds of methods to change myself, to optimize myself. I wanted to become the man who gets girls and everything. I tried many different things. And it was at this time where I realized that, yes, I can change, but it was a very frustrating endeavor because I was kind of battling against myself at this time. And I was like thinking I am the problem and what's wrong with me. And I really need to figure this out, or I'll never make it to a basic sense of wholeness or a basic sense of feeling okay with myself. So this brought me, with like 22 years, brought me to meditation, mindfulness meditation. So I read somewhere that this is the solution. This calms your mind. This brings you down, makes you less tense. And I thought, okay, this will make me relaxed. And this will bring me a girlfriend. And I did that more or less on a daily basis, this mindfulness meditations. Sometimes I made 30 minutes of John Kabat-Zinn's guided meditations, and I was very proud of myself that I survived another 30 minutes. It was more about being able to say that I meditate than actually meditating. So the good feeling I got was from being able to say everyone I'm a meditator, but I didn't really meditate at this point. Yeah, but with 24 years, finally, then I had some relaxation in my body-mind system, in my psychological system, and I got a girlfriend. But then at this point, I very quickly realized, this is not what I expected it to be or what I hoped it to be. So I noticed now I have my girlfriend, I could make that check mark, and still felt like fundamentally flawed, still felt deficient in my fundamental well-being. I realized, okay, this didn't fix my problem. And because I put so much energy into that, I just had to come to the realization that if this doesn't make me happy, nothing will. Whatever achievement I will ever achieve in this world, because I will never have so much faith into something again to make me happy, to make me whole, as I did into this one topic of having a girlfriend. So that was a very sobering realization. It didn't solve my problem. And I became a seeker, a spiritual seeker at this point, because I saw the world will never give me satisfaction as I sought it. And so I turned to non-duality. I found out about non-duality. My mindfulness teacher of that time was doing some of these Western non-duality style teachings, and I went into that and started to do self-inquiry in a light version. I didn't have a real teacher at this point who could show me how to do it correctly. So I was just kind of following a do-it-yourself approach.
Yeah.
And yeah, I followed non-duality teachers, Rupert Spira, Scott Killaby, Ramana Maharshi. I read all the books and all these modern non-duality teachers, Adyashanti, until I discovered Mahamudra and Dzogchen. I discovered the Buddhist approach to non-duality. I was impressed that it was much more about this pointing out style than this inquiry style of the Advaita or Neo-Advaita scene. And I was not willing to go to a traditional lineage at this time of Tibetan Buddhism or Tantric Buddhism to really try to get instructions on Mahamudra. I tried to do it myself, but it didn't really work out. Up until one point in 2016, where I stumbled across Baba, Amrita Baba, and his two-part formula to awakening, to non-dual awakening. And I was very impressed by what I was reading, because there was the claim that many people have awakened through that, and that it's a bulletproof technique to actually generate awakening. And I was impressed by this almost scientific approach to it, like a deconstructing approach. And there was clearly someone who knew what he's talking about. So I decided to go with it and started guidance with Baba in 2016. And after 3 weeks, I awoke and had my first definite insight into the empty nature of my mind. I discovered a certainty in my mind I've never experienced before. So this was so certain.
Yeah.
This was undoubtedly certain. This certainty was on a different level than just a belief system or just the theory I had about myself. Previously, everything I knew about non-duality, knew about psychology, knew about myself was belief-based. It was belief-based or conclusion-based or just overtaken from hearsay, what others thought or said. And this was the first time where I had a real first-person insight into this basic certainty of my natural state.
You've said previously about how that changed your confidence in a way. Can you describe that a little bit?
Yes. For the first time, I had a moment of real certainty. And for the first time, I had a breakthrough through that basic sense of deficiency or unworthiness or unlovableness that I've experienced my whole life or teenage years up until this point. Because whenever I sat down to meditate before, I had the feeling that this is my base level awareness, my base level beingness was that unworthiness. It really felt like there's nothing below that. This is just a basic sense of lacking true worth or true lovableness. So with awakening, I broke through that and saw that this was not true and that this was not my true nature. So for the first time, I saw that, and this sense of basic fundamental unworthiness, which was like my default mode of being, it evaporated at that time.
Oh, wow.
So with awakening, that fell away because I saw that it's not true. I saw that this is not who I am. It still was there from time to time in certain specific trigger situations, or when I was going through some periods of psychological suffering or fixation after awakening. But this basic sense, which is like always there, or seems to be always there, of unworthiness or deficiency, it fell away. And there was this basic okayness after awakening in my mind.
So first, you didn't carry on, did you, with Amrita Mandala Sangha? You had your awakening, but then you went back to the non-dual paths.
Exactly. After my awakening, I didn't feel like being a spiritual seeker anymore. I found what I was looking for, actually. It solved a lot of my existential suffering, and I was confident to start my life now in a basic sense. I started to finally be able to work as a life coach and make a living out of that. That all happened out or after awakening. So this gave me a lot of confidence, and things started to happen afterwards for me. And so my need for spiritual practice was satisfied for a while, for like 1.5 years. Or 1 year maybe. And then I started to be interested again, because I felt, there's a call in me to surrender more to life. I began to notice that something in me wants to surrender more and not have the feeling of I have the reins over my life and I have to control everything, which was for the first time, at least from a felt sense, possible in my life. I had the feeling I could control things and I could control the course of my life. So that was not a bad thing at this moment. But when I kind of lived that for a few months, after a while, I just noticed this is not how I want to live. I want to surrender more to life. And then I got back to non-duality. And I started to work with a self-inquiry teacher who did a self-inquiry in the style of Ramana Maharshi. His name is Gary Weber, an American guy. He was my teacher for 1 year. And he gave me email guidance. So we exchanged emails every 3 weeks, and he just guided me through the process of self-inquiry. But after some months of progress doing that, I started to see that this isn't really working for me either, because his version of non-duality was you have to silence your mind. You have to make sure with self-inquiry that no thoughts of self-referencing narrative or selfing narrative, no thoughts of self-basedness, that they don't arise anymore. So he thought that the aim of self-inquiry is to actually decondition your mind of thinking in a self-based way, and so that you don't have basically no thoughts anymore. And I started to getting good at this practice, and my gaps of thoughtlessness, of having no thoughts arising in my mind, these phases of stillness, they became longer, and there was peace and bliss with it, of course. But I noticed that whenever I got back into everyday life mode, I had the same triggers, the same stuff happening. So thoughts came back and nothing really did change. It felt just like I had some holiday again in the meditation, and then I come back and the whole stuff is there again. And the longer my gap became, the more I saw that this doesn't really change anything in my everyday life. And his answer to all my doubts was, you just have to do it more. It will fall away at one point. So your thinking will just not arise anymore in this way. And yeah, after about 10 months, I came to the conclusion, and I'm very happy about this confidence I had back then, and this feeling that I listened to, that feeling that I was stagnating. This brought me then to a place where I started to look around again. So, okay, what's going on here? My teacher cannot help me. So I have to look for myself again. And then I remembered the Mahamudra teachings again, looked into a book and saw it clearly written there in a few sentences that it's not about getting rid of thoughts in your mind, but the whole suffering and the whole confusion is coming from not seeing the true nature of thoughts. It's not in the thoughts themselves, not the arising of thoughts is the problem, but our way of perceiving them. We take them to be something substantial, something true, something separate. And this relationship to it, not seeing the true nature of thoughts, is what makes us living in a dualistic world and in a dualistic perception. And this was like the light bulb moment, because I had solution to my problem there. I was like, I was trying so much to still my mind, to get rid of thoughts, because I thought that thoughts are the problem. But that wasn't the case.
So this was something that was very compelling to you at the beginning, obviously, because otherwise you wouldn't have tried it. But then you've taken in your own experience and you've realized for yourself that there's some limitations to this. Perhaps there's some blind sides. And the blind side became very obvious to you when you looked at you read the Mahamudra.
Yes. And the Mahamudra teachings just made me realize, that's the way to go now. It's not the thoughts themselves. It's not seeing their true nature. And after this, it was maybe a week or so, and then I remembered Amrita Baba again and Amrita Mandala, and started doing the introductory practice on my own, and then took the empowerment in February 2019, and was determined to follow the Mahamudra path, the tantric path, under the guidance of Amrita Baba and in the Sangha of Amrita Mandala.
So that really was a light bulb moment then.
Yes. And I was fortunate to have already been exposed to the teachings or to the experience of emptiness or my true nature through awakening.
Yeah.
So that was just a beautiful foundation I laid a little earlier on in my life to build upon when I started to really feel the call for a spiritual practice.
So what was your path like at first? Because you seemed to progress quite quickly when you first started. So how did you assess that things were going well, and what did it look like?
Yes, I started then doing the rainbow body yoga practice on a daily basis. And besides that, I did Mahamudra style of Vipashyana practice. So Vipashyana is clear seeing, which means it's a practice where you look at specific phenomena in your mind and investigate them, or you look at them in a specific way so that you see their true nature, or you investigate the dualistic mind. Actually, you investigate your belief in separateness. So you have these thoughts coming up, and the thought seems to be solid, it seems to be separate from you, it seems to have power over you, it seems to entangle you. So you look into that thought and you check for yourself, you feel into it. Okay, what about that phenomenon in my mind, this thing there? Where is that power? Where is that solidity? Is it really there? Or does it only seem so? Does it only appear like that? But is it really there? So you pierce through that solidity, that selfness of the thought itself. So you believe it has a self nature and an independent existence. And you see, oh, no, it's it seems like like there is something solid, independent from you, but when you look close into it, it reveals itself as empty. It doesn't have a self nature. It doesn't have a solidity to it. And it collapses in this moment where you see clearly into the nature of the thought, where you see that it's appearing but not really existing. When you see the empty nature of the thought, your dualistic relationship to it collapses. And you have an insight into the nature of your mind, where the thought is not something separate from you anymore, but an empty phenomena in the nature, coming out of the nature, being the nature of mind. And you have that strong sense of being separate from that thought, or that strong sense that this thought is obscuring my clarity, obscuring my my pure perception, obscuring my peace, or disturbing my peace. That strong sense, it just collapses. It has no basis anymore when you see the true nature of the thought. So that was, besides Rainbow Body Yoga, was what I was doing a lot in my first period of practice. And I progressed rather quickly. Within 5 months, I had, I think, 11th Bhumi open, which is the first Mahasiddha Bhumi, the first layer of your subtle mind, of your energetic mind. The first layer where there is no karmic charge anymore. The first layer where there is no sense of cloudedness, sense of fogginess. So you have actually, through the Bhumi openings, you have like holes in your energy body, in the layers of your energy bodies. You have like holes where you then, with the 11th Bhumi, you have some kind of direct access to the emptiness body, to your Buddha nature, which is always on. I sometimes explain it like that. You are washing sheets, bed sheets, and you have like 10 layers of sheets. And there is a light after these 10 layers. And this light, if all the sheets are completely, don't have holes, no light comes through at the end, at the first sheet, after this 10 sheets, and here's the light. So with awakening, you actually pierce through all the layers to the light, which happens with every Bhumi opening. You have an insight into your Buddha nature. So you experience Buddha nature for a moment. This happens with every Bhumi opening. And this is like a piercing insight to the pure light of your being. And this, what is permanent about it, that it makes a hole into the first layer, into the hole, a hole into the first Bhumi layer of your energetic body. And through that hole, you have a little bit more light from all the sheets. And then you pierce the next one, have another Bhumi opening, and the next one, and the next one, and the next one, and there comes increasingly more light from your Buddha nature, starts to shimmer through, to glow through your energy body. And when you open the 11th Bhumi, or when you have holes in all your 10 karmic Bhumis, where there is a karmic charge or self-basedness stored, self-based energy, when you have a hole in all 10 of them, then you have at least a hole in every layer, so that the direct light of your Buddha nature is always available. It's always shining in your mind. And this is happening with 11th Bhumi opening, where you have pierced through all 10 karmic Bhumis of your energy body. And then you experience your Buddha nature in a subtle way all the time. You have access to it, which never goes again. It's always on, like a light bulb. It feels like switching on of a light bulb. So you have that background knowingness, that background awareness, which is always there, and which makes practice a lot easier, very, very different afterwards, because you have a solid ground to stand on. Because before the 10th Bhumi, you kind of have to wrestle your way to Buddha nature every time you sit down to practice. And you have little insights again, because many small glimpses happen during practice. And so practice feels a little bit more chaotic, a little bit more random. So your insights come randomly, your glimpses. You don't have yet a strong sense of what is happening in your mind. You don't really know what's happening with the practice. You're kind of just paving through the dark, and you have small moments where the light goes on again, and okay. And then it goes away again. And then you have Bhumi openings where it's a little bit more longer, this light moments where you have a revelation of your Buddha nature again. And then it goes away again. And then you are kind of paving through the dark again. But with 11th Bhumi, this changes, because you don't have to do that anymore. The Rigpa element of your awareness, the knowingness, this awareness that there is a knowingness in your mind, which is, with everything that happens, there is a basic knowingness, which never goes away, which is not dualistic. It has no beginning and no end. This knowingness quality is always on, and gives you a ground to stand on to do the practice now in a very systematic manner, where you really begin to see what is happening through practice. You really begin to see what dualistic fixation and dualistic confusion actually is. You have that scientific outlook. You are like a researcher, where you really see what's happening in your mind. And you start to very systematically begin to see that the dualistic mind starts to get weaker. You begin to see what it is made of, how it builds itself up. And so this is the whole path after 11th Bhumi, the path of perfecting these layers, these sheets in your mind.
So this is something that many have in our Sangha have talked about, this point of the 11th Bhumi. And it's like, as you're progressing along your path, or my experience of it is that things gradually become a little bit clearer. But then this point comes of opening the 11th Bhumi, and it's similar to the descriptions that everyone else described when you get there. All of a sudden, it's I sort of feel it's like you have one foot in the ocean all the time. Just there's this background awareness which is always there and doesn't switch off. In a way, you can't really understand it until you're there, but it's quite clear that several people or people talk about the same experience. So this is a progressive experience of insight. As you go through, things become slightly clearer as you open the bhumis along the way. Then you've got that hole to your Buddha nature. But when you've had the openings, you've still got the dirty bed sheets with all the dust. So in a way, this is where the perfections then come into play. We want to clean all of those bed sheets completely, so that we can experience our Buddha nature in full.
Exactly. So you, with the metaphor of the sheets hanging there, it's not just a hole in it when you perfect the Bhumi. You just remove all self-based stuck energy, which moves around the self, which means stuck. Stuck means it's self-based. It cannot really flow freely. It's moving in circles around itself. All that energy gets released through insight into the empty nature of the self and the empty nature of phenomena. You see that, there's no self. The energy can resolve around, so it just starts to be released. So the whole process of Bhumi perfections is then to kind of take the sheets down, or make the hole so big that there is no sheet anymore. So that the sense of obscuration in that Bhumi layer, or in that layer of your energy body, is cleaned. And this is something that you viscerally feel when you get better at feeling your energy body, feeling your subtle body. You really feel that this area of the first Bhumi, or the area of the second Bhumi or third Bhumi, they start to become clear. You start to to see that there is no fogginess there anymore, no sense of, oh, where to go here. It's just selfless, pure knowing clarity. No confusion anymore. And you begin to sense out, but there's still confusion, still fogginess in these other bhumis, which have not yet purified. And in this energetic sense, you can then map yourself. You can see where you are in the path, where there is still self-based energy in your subtle body.
So this can be a difficult path. And one of the reasons I mentioned about the dust is, to me, that sort of represents the tantric element of our practice, is that we're trying to become aware of this dust, because only by seeing the empty nature of the dust can we see through it. So what was your experience of the perfections as compared to the openings?
With the perfections, you have a sense of knowing what you do. So you know what you actually do to your energy body. You see how the dualistic confusion is. You see the dust, but you have not yet seen through the dust. So the dust is still arising as obscuration. You still have that feeling of me and Buddha nature and something in between. And this something in between is pretty much the essence of dualistic confusion, your ignorance. But for the first 6 bhumis of perfection practice, you are still working with emotions mainly and thoughts. So you still have the feeling like, well, yeah, this gross thoughts or these gross emotions, they are obscurations. They are, you still perceive them dualistically. But coming from this background awareness of the 11th bhumi, you have much more overview in your mind. So you have much more clarity about what's going on.
Did you have a certain sense that it was like an expansion in a way? If I describe my experience of the early stages of perfection, which sort of, that's where I am at the moment, occasionally you seem to have these moments of great expansion where you're like, aha, okay, there's these little aha moments along the way, but the overall progression is of a kind of expansion as you go through it. Was that a similar experience to you?
I know what you're talking about. This is part of the inside process where you can have that sense of expansion, of like unboundedness, which is like expanding. But true emptiness inside is not really an expansion, but more like an implosion. You implode the sense of self, or you implode that center point in your awareness. It just evaporates for a moment. It's not there anymore. So this doesn't leave you with a hugeness or a huge endless expansion, but it leaves you with a kind of non-dimensionality. So we are not even in 3-dimensional space anymore when you really realize the nature of mind or have an insight into it. So all kind of centering yourself in the field of your experience, all kind of giving yourself an identification, a point of reference, it falls away for a moment. This tendency is seen through for a moment in your mind, which leaves you in a non-identifiable openness, which is beyond 3-dimensionality at all.
So is this something you're kind of getting close to in the 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th bhumi as you're perfecting those?
Yeah. So until the 6th bhumi, you're still working mainly with thoughts and emotions. Or I personally, the Mahamudra practitioner in me worked mainly with thoughts, just mental thoughts, discursive thoughts. And I worked primarily with those, did my Vipashyana practice, did my rainbow body yoga practice, felt more connection to the gurus. Lots of things started to happen after the 11th bhumi and in the perfection phase. The Dharma starts to make sense. Also the relative teachings of the Dharma, like the 4 thoughts that turn the mind and the 6 paramitas and the 4 immeasurables, all that starts to make sense. you begin to experience the Dharma as a whole. You don't think anymore that's something else, this relative path or this gradual path of the paramitas and the preliminaries, and the only thing that really is doing something to your mind is the essence practice, the emptiness practice. You begin to see that this is really one unity, and there is no separation between the paths of gradual virtue-based practice and this insight-based practice that you're doing. So everything starts to make sense. The whole Dharma starts to make sense. Then at the Bhumi 6, perfection of 6 Bhumi, a significant shift happens again. Even I noticed, because I was never good at seeing Bhumi openings or Bhumi perfections happen. Now in retrospect, I see that some energetic movements happened in my mind, and then I had phases of more clarity, more insight into the nature of mind. Retrospectively, I see, wow, these were Bhumi openings. But at the time, I was not paying that much attention to it, because I really held myself to Gampopa's advice, which Milarepa always gave him. And when Gampopa came to Milarepa and told him about his wonderful experience he just had in meditation, or this terrible experience he just had in meditation, Milarepa always replied, "This experience is neither good nor bad. Keep meditating." So I was not paying that much attention to energetic phenomena happening during my path. So phases of bliss, phases of more clarity, I didn't put much attention to that, because I just knew I have to keep going with emptiness meditation. And I had this sense that, I will know when it's done, probably. So that was a very good guideline to follow through, to not get attached to certain experiences. But I overlooked the Bhumi openings by doing that. So I didn't know at the time that they were happening. Only with 11th Bhumi, I saw something is completely different now again. And with 6th Bhumi, I also noticed, whoa, something is very different now again. Because with 6th Bhumi, thoughts and emotions, all mental phenomena, and all perception basically is seen through. So you reach a stage where emptiness inside has stabilized on a new level, which is not just in the background of the knowingness of your awareness, but also in the foreground. So you begin to see that the actual phenomena happening in your mind are empty. So the insight of the 11th Bhumi starts to come into the foreground of your experience, and everything that happens starts to be empty as well. And with 6th Bhumi, thoughts and emotions are basically clarified. So they are clarified from dualistic confusion. There's still moments where you can get hung up in a thought, but basically as the default mode, you don't have the feeling anymore that thoughts or emotions are obscuring your mind, or that there's something you need to do about them, or that they shouldn't be there. You have a real taste of what liberation actually is like. You begin to see, liberation is not the absence of these emotions or the absence of these thoughts, but it's
a very important point.
Liberation is just seeing the true empty nature of these thoughts and emotions. They are selfless by nature. They are not obscuring anything. They are not standing in the way of someone. So that is a huge signpost that you reach there. And you in the Mahamudra path map, you reach the one taste stage of one taste, where phenomena and your mind have this one taste of emptiness.
Oh, okay. This is something you were doing, wasn't it? You were sort of measuring your progress as well as the experience of what we have in the Sangha, progressing through the Bhumis. You were also looking at the path map and the Mahamudra.
Yes, because I was reading so much and occupying my mind so much with the Mahamudra teachings. I felt such a strong connection to, and it's one of its main teachers, Mahasiddha Interviews from the 12th century. I felt such a strong connection to him that the Mahamudra path map was like my second path map I oriented myself on, especially during that time where my energy reading skill was not yet very usable for me. So where I couldn't really use the Bhumis or was not motivated enough to learn it, because everything kind of went pretty smoothly. But I also didn't have that capacity to read it naturally. So I oriented myself on this Mahamudra path map a lot. And this third yoga of the 4 yogas of Mahamudra, from unawakened state to enlightenment, is this stage of one taste.
But the perfection of the 6th was pretty clear to you. So I imagine that was quite useful in judging your progress and then for the final stages. And I wonder if your practice changed in any sort of way as you progress past 6th for the final Bhumis.
Yes, it changes again, because it gives you a huge confidence boost, because now you have so-called cessations happening in your mind. A cessation is when the whole samsaric or dualistic grasping in your mind collapses for a moment. So the whole tendency of giving yourself a center point in your mind falls away for a moment. And in this moment, you experience yourself as a Buddha. You experience your mind as Buddha mind, without any center point, without any duality. And after 6th Bhumi, these cessations, which also happened before, but much, much shorter, they start to become longer. And you have longer periods of like minutes or half an hour, or then progressively even hours, days, where you experience perfect clarity in your mind, non-obscureness, non-meditation, and a true experience of non-meditation, where there's no practice of emptiness to do. You're just, everything shines and radiates as emptiness, and you don't have the feeling of being obscured anymore. Nothing is in the way. There's no me that needs to get to emptiness or Buddha nature anymore. So the whole dualistic structure collapses, falls away. And this gives you a lot of confidence. And you begin again to see on a much subtler level what is still left. What makes it that I'm still in this dualistic mode of perception most of the time. So you have these cessations which give you clear contrast points to your samsaric mind.
Because we're getting to the really subtle stuff now, right?
Yeah. So now you have that awareness that thoughts and emotions and any concrete perceptions are not the source of dualistic confusion. They are not obscuring. So you begin to see the subtle functionings of duality. And this is the substrate mind. So you begin to perceive directly your substrate mind, which is some kind of a fogginess, a sense of being clouded, but not in an objective way. So there is nothing you can point to, like a thought or a feeling. No form whatsoever you can point to, which obscures you. So this basic sense of fogginess, a basic sense of unawareness, unconsciousness, starts to become directly visible. You have now insight into your mind that you begin to see your substrate mind directly. You perceive it directly. And you see that this is the root of ignorance in your mind. So this sense of fogginess still makes you grasp onto arisings in your mind, because you don't have an awareness of where that grasping in your mind arises from. So before you got aware of your dualistic confusion when you were completely invested in a thought again, or when you were completely invested in an emotion again. So the grasping already happened. now that the thing you grasped on turns out to be empty, you see this grasping movements arising in your mind, like this. You see the grasping happening before it grasps onto something. And then you begin to see, where does that grasping arise from? And this is this fogginess. And in this fogginess, you have still the sense of me and the fogginess and the clarity of mind. So you have duality in its most basic, most core form you begin to experience in your mind.
In a sense, that this is kind of where they talk about the mirror turning in on itself.
Yeah. So you begin to perceive your ignorance directly. And you have these moments of contrast, of cessation, where the whole thing collapses. And then you fall back again. You have increasingly more ping-ponging in your mind. So you have some kind of a switching or a swinging from dualistic confusion to Buddha nature, to dualistic confusion, to pure recognition. And this helps you get to the root of this fogginess. And you keep working on that fogginess. And practice-wise, some things change because you don't have to look at thoughts or emotions anymore. But you need to have practices which help you to really address that fogginess now. And in Amrita Mandala, we fortunately have practices for that. Amrita Baba has come up with innovations and has received teachings from Guru Rinpoche to shatter that substrate mind, to really address it, to really get to it. And to also, we also have tools where you can really evaluate your own higher bhumis, where there is still substrate mind confusion in your energy body. Because it's so subtle, you need tools which are very, very subtle. We have a lot of finesse and a lot of subtlety.
Sure.
And we have, for example, the 13 Pure Land jhanas, which is a deity yoga practice where you sing a certain mantra for specific bhumis, and then you notice when in that bhumi plate, in that layer of your energy body, when you start to be intoxicated by bliss, which is still a form of unconsciousness, of unawareness. It's blissful, but you begin to say, yes, like a trance. That is beautiful.
Yeah.
You have no clear insight into it, but it feels good. So you have through this deities, through these Buddhas that you use the mantra from to address specific layers of your energy body, you highlight the remaining confusion that you have there, the remaining fogginess, which lights up as intoxicating bliss. So you know, I'm at Bhumi 9, or I'm at Bhumi 10, and this is what's left. So this is a wonderful way, most precious teaching of Amrita Baba to navigate through this last stages of practice, which are incredibly subtle.
Imagine it's that subtleness that makes it so tricky. I wonder if you want to take an opportunity to talk about your final moments of doubt that you've talked to me about before, but I think it's perhaps important to mention about doubt along the way and how to perhaps see through that and address it. So what was this final moment of kind of this face-to-face with Mara that you had?
Oh, beautifully put. Yeah, at the level of 10th Bhumi, where I was still perfecting that, I had longer cessations of several days, 4 days, where you think you're done. But it sneaks back in, and there are tendencies in your mind where you don't really want to acknowledge that. That's the contracted subtle sense of selfing is creeping back in, but you eventually you have to acknowledge it again. So yes, my final moment, I remember it very clearly. I was still sitting on the cushion here, sitting on my little bench down here in front of my altar.
Oh, yeah.
And I was piercing through that sense of obscuration. It was not attached to any phenomenon anymore, but it was just a basic little sense of fogginess still in front of my first Bhumi, between my eyes, was still building itself up there. Like a sense of obscuration, a pure sense of obscuration. And I was really face to face with the last bits of dualistic confusion. And it built itself, this fogginess, and then I saw through it again. It fell away. It built itself again. It fell away. And I was still practicing like 2 hours on that one day, on the 25th February this year. I was practicing like that, and then I went to bed without having seen through it permanently. And the next day I woke up and realized immediately that this is gone. And how did I notice that? And this is the funny thing, which really exemplifies in a beautiful way this whole process of liberation. The same phenomena of fogginess still arose in this moment. But there was no dualistic relationship to anymore. There was no sense left that this fogginess is obscuring something or is separating me from something. There was no me that was separated from anything anymore. And there was no place or clarity or state to get to anymore. So the whole dualistic relationship of me getting somewhere through something, the whole 3 pillars of emptiness practice, me getting through the obscuration to Buddha nature, all was gone. And there was only Buddha nature left. Only this basic clarity shining as all phenomena, shining as the fogginess. So the fogginess was not arising in a dualistic way anymore. And this moment, I realized that I had attained non-meditation, the great non-meditation, as it is called in Mahamudra. So where non-meditation is stable and no duality is anymore in your mind, and you don't hope to reach Buddhahood anymore, because there's nothing else than Buddhahood anymore. There is no samsara anymore in this moment, but also no Buddhahood. You see that all the phenomena of samsara are and have always been Buddhahood. So you don't have the feeling that you reach now something new, but you reach normality. You reached your true nature. It really feels like that. You see clearly. You see perfectly clearly now. You see that there never was a me, never was a center point. There was only the belief in it. There was never obscuration in your mind. Because all phenomena that could ever arise are seen to be empty, and they cannot, there's no one left to be obscured and nothing left to obscure something. Because everything that arises is Dharmakaya.
So was there any experiential difference between this final cessation, as it were, and your previous cessations? Was there something that told you about this experience now that was different, perhaps even in hindsight, to your previous cessations?
Yes, there was no sense of excitedness or extraordinariness about it anymore. So in the previous cessations, there was that sense of, oh, wow. And
the facial expression there tells it all.
And that was not there anymore. It was completely normal. Nothing extraordinary.
I'm interested in wondering whether you experienced a certain sense of relief in that moment, or in those first few days of realizing your empty nature. Is there some sort of sense of relief that you experience?
Yes, because this existential struggle and this sense of having to attain a goal, or that there is a goal to attain, this is just completely gone. You're resting in your true nature all the time, and this sense of having to get to somewhere is gone. But I had a lot of doubts. So because emptiness inside just reveals the true nature of all phenomena, it doesn't change necessarily the content of your mind immediately. So you have still a discursive mind, which kind of functions still around a sense of self, but the sense of self is seen through in your mind. It's not there anymore, but the thoughts kind of keep happening as if there is still one. So you have I had these thoughts circling around this new basic clarity and this new basic freedom, and it was totally confusing my discursive mind. So it was confused. Can this really be? Can you still have this reaction? Can you still have this judgmental thought? There must be something wrong. This cannot be it. Because the discursive mind can only look at specific content and make conclusions about that. So the discursive mind cannot grasp what really happened. And it takes time. So it takes time. Then it took me several weeks until these doubts in my discursive mind, these thoughts about doubting this whole thing started to relax. And the discursive mind started to adapt to this new reality.
So this might be a little bit difficult for viewers to take in. I know this has been tricky to sort of get my head around as I've chatted to you guys and heard about experiences of emptiness. We have this idea, this is part of the kind of cultural baggage perhaps that comes with it, these ideas that we form about what Buddhahood is and what awakening is. So I'm relating to this from my experiences of awakening and how different they were to what I perhaps was expecting them to be. So then we're hearing someone who says he's realized emptiness, but then there's these doubts circulating around. But I think that the subtle point that you're making is that there's no binding to these doubts. You see them for what they are. You see the empty nature. So this is how those doubts are different to how they were even in the late stages of the 10th. Now they're subtly different. Yes,
there is no sense of meanness or identification entangled in these thoughts anymore. And they are seen as completely perfect. So before purification of 10th Bhumi, before reaching complete stabilized non-meditation and the first stage of Buddhahood, your discursive mind, your thoughts about things and the classification of things still is somehow the authority who tells you what is right or what is true in your mind. You still look up to thoughts as this small sense of me. You still look up to thoughts to tell you what's going on. And with the cessations, and then with this last cessation, the whole dynamic gets completely turned upside down. So you have this unrefutable, self-clear, completely undoubtable, basic certainty about the nature of all things, which doesn't use words or thoughts to express itself. It's just immediate. It's instant, and it's stable. You have that basic wordless knowing of the true nature of everything. And then you have these thoughts, this little claims happening in your discursive mind, but can this be and this be, which still tries to make relationships between things and tries to classify and order, put things into certain orders conceptually. But you're not there's no me anymore who looks up to that, because you are just this non-conceptual knowingness, this non-conceptual awareness.
It's quite interesting that it appears that there's this sort of momentum from the discursive mind, the momentum from these habits that we built up over lifetimes throughout all of our life. And even though we were refining throughout the spiritual path, it's kind of like a bulldozer that carries on its momentum. So in a way, is there some sort of adaptation period of this realization to work through?
Yes, it has a delay, and it has a delay to arrive at the in the discursive mind as well. At one point it starts to surrender. The discursive mind starts to surrender to this new reality. His rebellion against the obvious gets let go of. And then you have this rearranging post enlightenment. You have this rearranging of your psyche and your body to this new reality, because you have all these structures, all this momentum, as you said, still echoing that tight grasp of self-basedness. You still have that viscerally. You feel that in your body. You feel that in your psyche. You have these psychological patterns. You have this emotional patterns in your body, and these patterns of contraction and reacting, and a basic sense of tenseness in your body. And now, post-enlightenment, your nirmanakaya, your individual body, your materiality, your physicality, starts to get in tune with that liberated mind. It starts to release into that. This is the process after enlightenment.
So that sounds like something immensely useful to have, this non-attachment, this you're not binding and grasping to anything anymore. So now you can really observe what's going on. And so how has that looked for you as you've progressed? So this is a few months ago, back in February. So we're talking quite a number of months ago to begin to get used to this, or begin to kind of understand this experience that you're going through. How has this experience been for you as you see things unfolding?
Yes, you begin to see how your conditioning starts to melt away and starts to get in tune with your true nature. You begin to see that all this conditioning, all these psychological patterns, they stand out like cardboards in your mind, and they come off as unnatural in a sense. And there's no existential practice anymore. There's nothing to see through, but you still decide to surrender. You take your time to really bathe into that new sense of unindividualized aliveness in your mind. So you bathe your sense of your physical sense of individuality, or your psychological sense of individuality, in thought patterns, and you begin to let that bathe in this oceanic aliveness that is the Sambhogakaya, which is the aliveness aspect of your mind. So after enlightenment, when you first reach that emptiness, you have a few weeks then or months where your Sambhogakaya starts to reveal itself. So you don't have that basic emptiness, but you really begin to sense that fullness in everything, that vibrancy.
Oh, I see.
So this becomes very, very visceral. And first, after 10th Bhumi, it was like very empty. And then this oceanic aliveness starts to reveal itself. And this then helps you to integrate and be absorbed your sense of tenseness in the body, your sense of tenseness in the psyche. You have the structures that kind of are still in place, just melt away little by little. And we use Hindu Mahasiddhas and Hindu Buddhas like Shiva or Babaji or Krishna. They really help you through the blissful nature of the Sambhogakaya. And they really are impersonifications of this blissful aspect, the Sambhogakaya aspect of the mind. Also emptiness, but when you do practice with Hindu Buddhas, you have a more stronger sense of this blissfulness.
This is this visceralness that you're describing, because Baba has talked about Hindus, Mahasiddhas, in a sense, when we do tantric meditation with them, it's much more felt in the body. But also I hear of sort of the visual and sound. Perhaps there's some sense it becomes more colorful, much more intimate.
Yeah, it's just the fullness of everything. It's very blissful. It's very saturated. It's just completely full of love and full of aliveness. So the tenseness just cannot do anything against that. It starts to melt. I don't know how it is called in English when you have like some things you can put in water and then it dissolves like tablets.
Yeah, yeah. Uh-huh. Effervescent.
And it kind of feels like that.
Yeah. Okay.
Your body feels like such a tablet. It just,
yeah.
it just.
I was wondering how does it sort of feel in the body?
Yeah.
So that's the description of it. And the body feels very relaxed by this point, I imagine.
Yeah.
And so, what is this idea of? I hear some of you guys talk about the idea of effortlessness, and the idea that we, as samsara beings, we have this phenomena that we attach to, and it feels heavy. But when you see through the emptiness of it, it loses its weight. Thoughts, the binding of and the grip that thoughts have, they lose their weight. Can you talk about how this experience of effortlessness and kind of a weightlessness is experienced?
There's no sense that you have to intervene into the flow of your experience anymore. So there's really no sense of attachment or resistance anymore, that you have to make this to certain things and you have to make this to certain things happening in your mind.
Yeah.
So that's all there is to the heaviness, this clinging and the resistance.
Yeah.
That was made this phenomena so heavy, because you had this constant impression you have to do something with them. You cannot just rest. You always have to do something and have to be on the watch and have to make sure that the right things happen and the wrong things don't happen. Or
Yeah.
So this is
the first thing I see my samsaric mind reacting to when you say that is, what about choice? It's like, how do we make choices if we're letting everything just do its own thing?
Yeah, choice, the sense of choosing is still there psychologically. So when I have two options and I'm not immediately sure about which one to take, there is thinking about it going on. There is discrimination happening in my mind. And then a choice is made. So in a sense, it doesn't really feel that different from content-wise. Your ego structure as a self-organizing principle of your body-mind is still in place in your psyche. It is necessary to survive in this world and be a functional human being. It's just part of our setup. So this is still there, but there is no existential, no collapsing of the mind into the center point of this self-organizing principle. So the self-organizing principle of the body mind and the individual body, that is Ugi, that is Chris, still happens, but it is seen for what it is. It is not closer to my essence than the sound of the bird or the noise of the street. There is no such sense of identification anymore with anything. And that's true emptiness realization. It's the falling away of all identification. It's not the falling away of specific kinds of identification, like with the body or with thoughts, like some spiritual traditions speak, so that you're then the I am, you're the cosmic consciousness, which is still a form of identification. So true emptiness insight is going beyond the sense of identification.
In a way, what you're talking about there is what I was describing in my experience of this sense of expansion, but that's not it. It's when everything's deconstructed, an implosion, as it were. All constructs are shattered.
Yeah. The sense of someone giving itself a form, however subtle or however all-encompassing, is seen through in itself.
So how is meditation and practice now? For you, sort of where do you see your practice going as well? And also perhaps I'll ask about how is concentration for you? Did you notice a marked difference in concentration? Is concentration just on permanently, or is there an element of you're still working with that kind of thing?
Yes, practices, you're sitting down or you close your eyes and you have, as I describe it, you have instant samadhi. So you are instantly in deep absorption, but not to the exclusion of the world, not this kind of escaping samadhi from the world. So
you're not lost in bliss. You're
yes, but you just notice that there is still some relative difference between your physical perception and when you close your eyes. So this is what happens. You bridge that contrast after emptiness realization. You start to dissolve your fixation on physical reality and all these fixed structures of perceptions. They start to dissolve and to melt away this, like the beliefs and the reactivity in your body, which is all part of that. And so when I sit down to meditate, there's just instantly this pure blissfulness, which more and more is all on all the time.
Okay.
So this realization of the Sambhogakaya in its totality, and working through all kinds of echo karmas, which are structures of tenseness or structures of fixation, which are still in place, they start to melt away, and you really notice that. But on a more relative level, I'm really working on mastering my relative bodhicitta, because ultimate bodhicitta is you see that everything is Buddha, but your body mind might still be judgmental in certain ways, or not really kind. This kindness aspect of personality, this warm-heartedness, I just notice how there's still a lot of work to do in that sense, to let go of, to really melt with that warm-heartedness of my true nature, so that my whole speech, my whole thought patterns are in alignment with the Buddha nature. So that's where I put a lot of emphasis on. Concentration wise, you, on a relative sense, you can still get distracted. Someone can tell you something and you see a bird and whoop, you're with attention there with the beautiful bird, and you don't listen focusedly anymore for a moment. So that sense of relative attention, of course, can still be distracted. But this sense of ongoing awareness, ongoing recognition is another sense of, it's not an attention-based sense of awareness. So this is on all the time and it never goes away. So you are completely present with whatever happens all the time, even if your relative sense of attention is distracted, but you're just completely present with that as well, which is another puzzling moment for people who haven't experienced that anymore, because they think, well, probably enlightenment is when I don't get distracted anymore. But enlightenment is beyond distraction and being present or being concentrated anymore, because you see even the feelings and thoughts and the sense of being distracted is just an empty phenomena.
So this rest as a practice for you and for our Sangha as a whole is to realize the full fruition of rainbow body. And so as you're talking about the realization of emptiness, and in a way, would you describe it as you're making your outward expression of your Buddha nature align with the relative? Is that an apt description of kind of what this goal is, as it were?
Yes, exactly. First you have your Buddha nature, your Buddha body, your emptiness body, which gets realized. Then you see the Sambhogakaya, that oceanic aliveness and goodness and love. It starts to be completely evident as well, like emptiness. Everything is that. And the last body that you have to still be purified is your relative body, your individuality, your nirmanakaya, your physical expression. And then that's the last one, the most stubborn one, to drop into its natural state. So first you have the mind dropping into its natural state. Then you have your energy body dropping into its natural state, and then you have your physical body dropping into its natural state.
Yeah. So what would you say to people who are perhaps considering the path, this path, Amrita Mandala Sangha? Is it possible? And where do you see the Sangha going in terms of realized people and its potential for its benefits to everyone?
I can tell everyone, to everyone who is interested in this practice, in tantric yoga practice, non-dual practice, that having this interest in the first place is the only condition you can have to, or you need to have to become a Buddha. Because if you are not interested in enlightenment or in seeing your true nature, you cannot be brought to it, because it's your own interest, your own inner fire and determination which brings you to it. And if you have that interest, I don't see a reason why you cannot come to this same realization that I've had, because that's all I brought with me. And I was full of doubts and full of problems and challenges throughout my path. So I was never like, from the beginning, I'm going to get this, because first many months you wonder, is this really possible? And more you get a sense for it. And you begin to see that it is actually possible. And after a while, when you have this sense of it is possible, you see it's not only possible, but I can get it. And then it changes to I will get it. So your sense of confidence on the path just grows with the practice. And this is something that is definitely a blessing for the Sangha, that we have many people now, more and more people reaching that first stage of Buddhahood, this enlightenment of our mind, of the Dharmakaya, which makes it so much more graspable, palpable for the rest of the Sangha, and creates momentum. And the Sangha in general is heading into a good direction. We have live retreats, and we are really working on meeting each other more in person, which is an essential aspect of this practice, to have peers, to have people who are on the same path with you, who support you, to make this whole Sangha, this pillar of enlightenment practice, which is the Sangha, this refuge of the Sangha, to make it much more powerful.
My experience accords with yours, I think, where my momentum along the path was because of this wish to awaken. Before I had that, I wasn't interested at all, in a way. I wanted to meditate and progress along the path. But it wasn't until I had this experience, like awakening is a necessity now. This suffering is too much, and I need to escape it. And until those thoughts arose, there wasn't that momentum towards awakening. But it seems when you surrender to this idea that things and doors open up to you, when you ask that question, I need to awaken.
Yeah. Exactly. And this is the beginning point for everyone listening who has done some kind of a practice, who hasn't done tantric practice or hasn't reached awakening yet. Start as I did. Start with the 2-part formula. Go through that. This is a bulletproof scientific method to generate this first awakening. And I really hold it with Shiva. Shiva spoke to his disciples about tantric yoga practice as yogic science, the science of yoga. So this is not wishful thinking. This is not not random what we are doing here, but these are time-proven principles in action, stripped to its very core, to its essence. And this 2-part formula practice for generating non-dual awakening is one of these wonderful tools and unique tools to get that first permanent taste of the awakened, enlightened mind in us. And do yourself a favor and go through that.
So this isn't a dogmatic approach, because we have quite a few members in our Sangha who have awoken through other methods. It's just one that we've tried and tested, and one that has been proven in our experience. Exactly.
In the end, there's only one yoga, and it works through many ways. And Amrita Mandala practice just works very efficiently and is very, very powerful for our modern lifestyle. And even a person like me who does work and he's not living in a monastery and goes out drinking and having fun can go through the path within 3 years, which is very quick. So that's not something to aim for a specific time frame. That's not helpful, but I would say this path can be completed within a decade, which is amazing. Wonderful. Thank you for that nice conclusion there, Ugi, and for your taking us on this journey of your experience along the path, and some very clear descriptions of what the realization of emptiness is like. So until next time, thank you very much. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, viewer, for watching. All the best on your practice.